Good afternoon, everyone. This is meteorologist Gerard Bailey here for NewsNation, and we're giving you the latest update again. The National Hurricane Center gave us the latest information as of around 4 o'clock. So this is the latest with Hurricane Delta now beginning to see the eye wall making landfall across Louisiana. Current information from them, they didn't change much since the last update at 2. 105 mile per hour winds, still category 2 hurricane, moving north-northeast at 14 miles per hour. It's about 35 miles south of Cameron, Louisiana. You may remember that's the exact same location that just got hammered by Hurricane Laura about 6 weeks ago. So at the current speed and track, landfall, the very center of circulation, is expected to cross into the Cameron Parish in Louisiana here in about 2 hours. So we are seeing some hurricane conditions now. You just saw a live picture a little bit ago there of New Orleans. They don't seem to be in the direct path of this storm, but you can see still some impacts that they will get. Likely storm surge along the edges and maybe a little bit of rain, but they're not going to see a whole lot in New Orleans, which is pretty surprising actually, given that 4 storms have made landfall and they just have not had a whole lot of impact. So lucky for New Orleans here. All right, the radar picture. This is going to be a little difficult on the radar today because the main radar that we're trying to look out of is near Lake Charles, Louisiana, which got annihilated by Hurricane Laura 6 weeks ago. They have not been able to repair that, so we're looking out of more distant radars. You're not able to get a full clear picture of the whole storm's entirety there. But looking out of the one near Houston, we can see they're seeing substantial rainfall. If you look closely, there is the edge of the eye wall starting to make some impacts there. So you can zoom in here. We'll take a closer look. There's Lake Charles, and Cameron, Louisiana is right there on the border. But looking now, you see there's the edge of that eye wall now coming ashore. So they're getting hurricane force conditions with that eye wall now moving in. All right, here's the latest track from the Hurricane Center. In the next couple hours, making landfall, quickly dropping in the wind speeds as these systems often do. As soon as they lose their source of energy, the warm ocean waters, they tend to just weaken and continue to go down. So by late tonight, around midnight, already down to near tropical storm strength with only 70 mile per hour winds. And then continuing to further weaken, still tropical storm by tomorrow afternoon as it crosses into Arkansas and Louisiana. And then continuing its track to the northeast, moving across Tennessee and eventually near Kentucky. That's the center of circulation, but we will see impacts reaching outside of that cone of uncertainty where the track, the center of it, is likely to move. All right, so currently still seeing hurricane conditions to the south. We do have hurricane warnings that are, of course, continuing. This is a look at some of those wind gusts that are likely going to happen as the worst of the wind is moving ashore. 60, 80, 100 mile per hour winds, all likely near the center of circulation around that eye wall. But you see the winds die down pretty significantly here. As we move into Saturday evening, we're looking at nothing more than around tropical storm force winds, very near that. As we look a little bit across Arkansas and Mississippi, even into Alabama and Tennessee. One thing to note though, while the hurricane force winds are about 70 miles in diameter, the tropical storm force winds are very far reaching on this storm, very wide, 320 miles wide, last listed here. That is quite a distance. So you could be far away from that center of circulation by over 100 miles and still get tropical storm force conditions. Those are winds 40 miles per hour all the way up to 70 miles per hour, really 73. So one thing to know, that is a large wind field. It does reach out far, so you could still see and feel that. Storm surge, the latest storm surge trend has been showing mostly on the order of 5 to 8 feet of surge, but there have been some places that may see a bit more than that, especially to the east in south central Louisiana along the coastline there, including just the south of New Liberia. These are the areas that have been hit so hard by Hurricane Laura's storm surge. 17 feet of storm surge they saw from that. Now they're getting it again, but maybe not quite to that degree. Still, 7 to 10 feet of storm surge is still significant. Near the Lake Charles area, it looks like we have another live shot. Where's this one from, Michael?
I'm not sure.
We're not sure yet, but that, yeah, we're looking at the winds blowing right there as he's cleaning off the camera lens. Looks like they're in the parking garage getting some pretty strong winds here. I would be willing to bet this is probably closer to the center, maybe closer to Lake Charles or Cameron in in a parking garage. So there it is, a lot of blowing wind and rain hitting them pretty hard, but just getting going there in those locations. We'll work to figure out if we can see where that camera's from. But you see the storm surge impacts are going to be significant, especially to the east side, the right side of that storm. Rainfall is going to spread very far inland, and believe it or not, the storm surge is going to go pretty far as well. Since most of Louisiana is just a big wetland, it is still susceptible to storm surge, but also to flooding as well. 4, 6 to even 8 inches of rainfall, a good likelihood, and locally higher amounts through this. But the storm is moving at a pretty good clip here. 15 miles per hour is actually pretty decent speed, and it's going to continue on, but that's enough time to still drop some rainfall enough to cause localized flooding. Freshwater flooding is usually the most life-threatening thing that we have, the thing that tends to be causing the most fatalities out of hurricanes. So that's one thing we have to pay close attention to still. And the rain's going to reach pretty far inland, as you see, dying down as the system dies down, but still reaching 2-4 inches of rainfall all the way up into the Appalachian Mountains, and even reaching as far to the north as New York. Okay, so that was Lake Charles. Thank you, Michael. So that was the live video you just saw out of Lake Charles. That's what I was thinking. All right, so that is the rainfall threat. You had the storm surge threat. That was the wind threat. Also, with these hurricanes, you're going to be looking at the potential for even tornadoes. Now today we haven't seen that so much. That's the good thing, is that we have not had a whole lot of problems with tornadoes from those outer bands that come ashore, but doesn't mean we can't still have that happening either tonight and in the next couple of days. As we move into Saturday, we'll be looking at a threat for possibly some tornadoes with the hurricane here across Birmingham, Alabama, crossing into Mississippi, nearly going to Jackson, Mississippi. And then the threat shifts even further on Sunday, likely reaching the Carolinas and parts of eastern Georgia. So storms just continue to churn all the way through, and that's been pretty amazing. One thing I wanted to show you guys is initially, a lot of folks, I was watching and hearing that there were some comparisons between Hurricane Delta and back in 2005, Hurricane Wilma. I plotted the tracks on this right here. Take a look. Wilma started in almost the exact same location, which was near Jamaica, and took almost the exact same path, rapidly exploding in intensity, just like what Delta did, and aiming right for Cancun in the Yucatan Peninsula and Cozumel. They took the same path, and a lot of folks, they might have been following that and said, is it going to do the exact same thing? And this just goes to show you that you can have two storms that look almost identical with where they begin, how quickly they develop, and taking a very similar path, but look at the divergence that they took. So just goes to show you that you cannot forecast on a current storm based upon what another storm did that may have taken those exact same paths. It really doesn't matter. No two storms are the same, and they can do totally different things. They often do. So history, unfortunately, actually rarely repeats itself with exact tracks. However, one piece of history that did repeat itself here, just like Hurricane Laura, we saw it run into the same location. So now we're about to add a 10th hurricane, or actually 10th named storm, to the list of storms that have made impact on the continental United States. So Delta and Laura are going to take similar impacting locations, where Cameron Parish in Louisiana getting hit again, and that's pretty incredible. So there's all the storms that made landfall in the continental U.S. this year, and Delta is continuing to follow that path right there. What we have seen with all of these storms, 2 Category 1 hurricanes in Padre Island, Texas. We had Isaias as an Ocean Isle beach landfall. Laura was by far the strongest, but still a Category 2 hurricane versus Category 3 with what Delta's doing is pretty much bringing almost the exact same impacts here. That's one very important thing to note. Delta might have weakened a little bit from Category 3 down to a Category 2 in the last 4 to 6 hours, but that does not mean they're not going to get almost the same impacts. They will. The only change that we're seeing here are the peak intensity winds near the center will not be as much, but 95% of the folks that are going to feel impacts from Delta are going to see the exact same thing, no matter if it was a Category 3 or 2 storm. All right, so here we go. As we move into landfall, 2020 will be the 10th top number 1. It'll have 10 named storms, and that puts it in the number 1 spot of all seasons since 1851. We have not seen this many landfalling named storms. That's pretty incredible. The good news is it doesn't look like there's anything immediately behind Delta, but we've made it a long way down that list of names, exhausting the list very early in middle of September here, and then October has just been shooting off like a rocket once we got into there. And we would have to get to Zeta to tie the all-time record for number of named storms, which again got to Zeta in 2005, and this season just does not seem to really be weakening. Michael, if we have any questions, I believe this is another live shot from Lake Charles again. If we have any questions, we can take any questions. He's not seeing any just yet, but he's going to take a look. In the meantime, I wanted to go over one other thing. And we talked about this yesterday a little bit. Believe it or not, hurricanes have a purpose, a very important one as well. We don't talk about hurricanes being very good things. There's not much to it, but believe it or not, they have a very useful and good purpose. All of weather is the Earth's trying to cool itself down. It's trying its hardest. Unfortunately, it does it in very violent ways, like we're seeing with hurricanes. But what hurricanes do is they're excellent at removing heat out of the oceans. Those storms that are out there take all the energy from the oceans. It's warm oceans with the heat rising to form clouds, and then the heat can escape in the outer space. So hurricanes are doing a great job of trying to help cool the Earth. It's not a good thing, of course, when they impact land and cause a lot of problems, but very important. If we did not have them, we would likely have oceans at such a high temperature that we may not even be able to sustain life on this planet. So I just wanted to make sure everyone realizes that's a very fascinating thing, but without hurricanes, we'd actually be in more trouble than we would with them. So pretty amazing. Were you able to find any questions?
Yeah, we have one question from Brandy. She is in Aberdeen, Mississippi, which looks to be on the border of Mississippi and Alabama. Okay. Wondering what it's going to be like in her area.
Definitely going to see some breezy conditions for you there through Alabama and Mississippi. I'll go back to the rain graphic. There will be some rain that moves through these areas. I'm not exactly sure where that is, but you said on the border. You can see there, including the Alabama and Mississippi border, where there will be the potential to see some rainfall. The tornado threat will be up for you guys tomorrow. So keep that in mind. Late tonight in through tomorrow, there will be an enhanced tornado threat on that side, but also the possibility of seeing 2 to 4 inches of rainfall. Some breezy conditions. You may see some winds gusting 40, perhaps 50 miles per hour, but if you're living in Alabama, that's not too much different than what you would get from your regular summertime thunderstorms and even some of these stronger thunderstorms, maybe not to the severe limits. So if you're prepared enough for that, make sure you have the NewsNation Now app, but anything other to be able to get tornado warnings, because these tornadoes that get spun up by hurricanes can happen very quickly, very suddenly. By the time the warning even goes out, sometimes the tornado is already gone. So you have to be prepared to move and move quickly, as they are very rapid spin-ups.
And it looks like we have one other comment just from Scott. He's in Lafayette, Louisiana. He says definitely picking up steam. Okay,
yeah. Lafayette, Louisiana is definitely going to begin there. And Lafayette, Louisiana is likely going to be seeing the hurricane force conditions. If they haven't yet, he's right there on the edge of that. And unfortunately, these are the same communities that have been hit so hard. You just saw some of the power crews out there. They're going to be working tirelessly. They've been working tirelessly nonstop to try to get power restored back to the area. And now it's insult to injury when they have to go back to the same spots where they just suffered so much from Hurricane Laura, and they're back at it again. So these guys have been working really, really hard, and that was live video, I believe, again, still in Lake Charles, where they were hit so very hard, and again, Cameron, Louisiana, and those are the same locations right now. Let's go back to the radar one more time and give you another close-up shot of what this is doing here. So Lake Charles, remember the radar got wiped out there, so we're not getting the greatest radar picture, but you can see that edge of the eye wall now making its way ashore. And this has been pretty interesting to watch, because we're having to see things from a distance versus right on top of it. Let's see if I can kind of point a few things out here. The outer bands have been those tropical storm force winds, which are 40 to around 70 mile per hour winds, but the hurricane force winds, I'll try to draw this out for you guys on a very tiny screen here, but these are the hurricane force winds in that eye wall right there that I just circled. And that's what's moving ashore. And Lake Charles, Lafayette, you'll see, Jennings, those are the areas that will likely experience hurricane force winds, and they're already doing that now just to your south. So getting ready to cross I-10 here in just the next 1 to 2 hours. All right, at 7 o'clock, myself and Chief Meteorologist Albert Ramon will be on NewsNation. So make sure you're tuning in on WGN America. We're going to be tracking this system all the way through. giving the latest updates on what we're expecting here. Of course, live reports in these areas, and we'll be able to track this thing. It makes it a little more difficult as it gets dark to be able to see what is really going on, but we're able to see things now, and we'll have the latest information from the National Hurricane Center as well, and we'll have some live reports on what the storm is doing, where it's headed, and any new information that comes out. So make sure you're tuning in. We'll see you then.